So what we're going to do is we're going to have a slides showing you some of my artwork, the uh, the description of the artwork, and the symbols, the biosymbols of the art. And what I like you to do is like a working Rorschach for you to look at them. I'll give you the story about them, and I'll tell you about the symbols in on the journey, and then you can rate them from 1 to 7, not on which is better or whatever, but which one do you identify with the most. And 1 is you don't identify at all. 7 is you identify completely with it, and it'll be either the imagery or the narrative that I give you. But either way, then we can go back and look at it, and you'll find a lot of very interesting things about you, and also about you creating your own mindscapes, because this is about mindscapes. And then you can create a mindscape based on whatever art, whether it's drawing or music or whatever it is that you do, that you have to incorporate art into your life. The Greek philosophers always felt that a balanced life always had to have some kind of art, or whatever that is. And art allows you to express things that you normally can't on a linear basis. So it's very powerful. For me, it's been very good because it's helped me through some very difficult times and also from some very good times. So do you have any questions before we start? Everybody okay? All right. All right. So we'll go ahead and start. Samantha's going to show you the slides, and we'll go over them and just rate them from 1 to 7 based on which you identify. The number 7 you identify has a strong feeling for you about something that you don't even know, but it has a connection. And a 1 would be it's not at all. So it's not whether you like him or not, but it's more like the identification with it. Is that the order, Samantha? Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. All right. The what I'm going to show you is an artist has to have his or her own signature. So when you see a Picasso, you know that's a Picasso. You see a Dali, that's a Dali. And for quite a while, I really had to find myself because I learned art in France, and it was you first have to learn how to draw, of course, and draft, and then you learn uh, all the rules of art, the perspective and color and all these other things. And then you can do whatever you want with it. Now, I do surrealistic art. And surrealistic art, we can go to the first uh, pair. So realistic art is not copying the world. So it's not about how accurate you are with the world. I could do some paintings and copy something, but that's different. That's realistic art. So realist art, you go inside into your own mindscapes, and then you draw whatever comes up, whether it's a figure or a prefigure, whatever it is, you draw it and you allow it to happen. So the signature that I have is that I never get away from the figure. Abstract expressionism, for example, will do no figures, just all kinds of crazy stuff, and there's no figure. But I always stay with the figure. And the signature that I have, you'll see that it's consistent with the colors and with the kinds of figures. So rather than trying to do something, so what I do is I use uh, neuropsychology. Rather than saying, okay, this is going to be on the left, entering the drift, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'll start drawing, and then of course, and they're all colored. Some are colors and some are watercolors. So it's a combination. But then I start drawing and drawing without even thinking, forcing myself not to think it. So my mind, my subconscious, can get on canvas or can get on the paper, and then I allow myself to really bring out whatever is there. And then later, that's right hemisphere. Then later I look at it and I look at it and look at it. Finally, I come up with a name and entering the drift. Okay, so then what I've done is I brought together left hemisphere with right hemisphere, non-linear with linear. Now, in my work, I have certain symbols that carry the journey, my mindscape, but you can create your own mindscapes too. And you'll see that in the work, there's either one or all three or four of the symbols. On the left, you see that at the bottom left, there's an apple. And an apple is usually one of the symbols that I use. And on the journey, for your own symbols, that means options or a temptation. It comes from, let's say, Adam and Eve, the temptation. But here, it's more the temptation for options, not necessarily to do something evil or not. The temptations you have to do something that you have an option to do or not to do. So that's the beginning part of the journey. Then this one is a Picasso-ish kind of style. I didn't plan it that way, but that's how it came out. Then on the around the bottom, the middle, you'll see that there's a hand holding a torch, and that is a symbol that I usually have that has to do with light, which is the vision of your journey. So you can start looking at your own journey. What are your symbols that you have? It could be a candle, it could be an apple, it could be whatever. But you create your own symbology and your own mindscape. So this is to get you to create your own mindscapes. So it has strong colors and it has Picasso figures, a little bit of a, a cubism in it, but it's entering the drift. And the drift is the concept that those of you who read my book know that I use it as a way of going into synchronicity. The drift is synchronicity. So you pay attention to synchronistic events and then you jump into the drift, but you can't look for the drift. It finds you by going into synchronistic events. The next one has to do more with an image that I have of Don Quixote and of La Mancha. And what that represents to me is the visionary in me. The visionary Don Quixote, as you know, was written in the probably 13th century, I think 14th century. And it was probably the first modern novel. And Don Quixote was a, whoops, did we lose it?
Yep, sorry, I have to go back the other way.
Okay, so Don Quixote was he saw himself as a knight, and that he was fighting evil, and evil were the big windmills that you see when you're in La Mancha in Spain. You see those windmills, and I was with a friend who was quite naive about literature, and I said to him, "Hey, look, that's Don Quixote's windmill." He said, "No kidding, is that really?" You know, of course, it's a novel, but you do see the windmills all over the place. So Don Quixote is a visionary who creates a greater than life image that's a part of you. All of those things are archetypes that you have, and it could be something else for you. It doesn't have to be Don Quixote. But then the demons that you're fighting, the demons that he was fighting, is very allegorical. He was fighting the demons within. You have demons of people that have betrayed you, or people that have hurt you, or people that have loved you, and you have images, and some are demons and some are not, but you fighting those psychologically in the space, and you see Don Quixote there with a kind of a look toward the future, but a bit uh, exhausted from the fight, and in the back you see the windmill, and then he has, instead of, in the left side, because it's not the whole, you can't see the whole picture. On the left side of the painting, you see his hand holding, instead of holding the lance that he usually has, he's holding a torch. So what he's holding is light for his journey, rather than the torch to fight demons. So you can fight the demons with light, bringing light to the demons. So a lot of symbology, a lot of, so you can rate 1 to 7 on the first one, that 1 to 7 on, and if it doesn't do anything for you, 1, 2, 3. If it does something for you, you begin to identify with yourself, even if you don't know what it is. We can kind of deconstruct that later. Just go ahead and rate each one of them, and make sure that you have the title, so that we can go back to it and talk about it. Okay. So if you have any questions, stop me. So make sure that you're doing what needs to be done. Okay, let's go. Yes.
Can you repeat the instructions? That was a lot of, you just said a lot of things. Can you repeat the instructions for the exercise?
Yeah, what you do is you look at the painting or the work, and whatever you go from 1 to 7, you rate it from 1 to 7. A 1, if it doesn't really, not whether it's pretty or ugly or nice or not that, it's more like, if you identify with a painting quite a bit without even knowing, it would be a 7. But if it doesn't identify, it's a nice painting and you like it, but it doesn't do anything for you, then it's a 1 or a 2 or a 3. So it's like a Likert scale. The 7 is the most identification emotionally or intellectually or in every way, and the 1 is the least identification. And then make sure that you write the rating and the name of the painting, the title, so we can go back. You'll see some very interesting things happening. Okay, this is a watercolor. The other one, they're both watercolors. So I try to push the watercolor so they'll look less watercolor and more intense. Okay, the next two. All right, here again we have, on the left we have Don Quixote. That's a very image of Don Quixote. He's on the horse, and he has his lance and he has his shield, and in the back there's there's a windmill, but it's a windmill that looks like almost like a dinosaur type of animal. And then el hidalgo in Spanish means the gentleman, but it's a really interesting word because a gentleman is a gentleman of substance. And the word hidalgo came about in the 12th century, and hidalgo is really a contraction of hijo de algo, which means son of something, which means son of something significant. And that's where hidalgo comes from. But the word now hidalgo means a gentleman or a nobleman. And that's what I called Don Quixote, because he thought he was a nobleman. And all of it was his own fantasy. Oh, and while I'm going along, if you have any questions, stop me, because if you need anything, just let me know about that particular piece or that is it's on paper, and it's ink and watercolor, pen and ink and watercolor. And I did these. This is a series that I call the Brick Tops, which is a restaurant here in Nashville that has paper table covers. And what I would do is I would go there for dinner, and I would do the drawing, and then I would tear up the piece, and I would take it home and then finish it with usually with colored pencils. And the manager came one day and he said, "Oh, so you're the one who's tearing up the paper." So we were wondering what people were doing with that, because they're always tearing it up, and it was you. And then I saw him I showed him the paintings, and he really loved it. And so anytime I came over, he would make sure that I got the right paper and everything. So it's very nice. And I did quite a bit. I did about 35 to 40 of them. Quite an expensive game, because the place was not cheap. But the food was great. And I had the salmon, and after I finished, I would do it. So I would bring it home and then do the drawing. Sometimes it took quite a while. For example, the one on the right, Captain Blood, is Captain Blood. I don't know if you know the novel. It's a Sabatini, and this is back from the 40s and the 50s, and Errol Flynn played Captain Blood. And Captain Blood was during the times of early 1700s, 1800 in England. There was a tyranny, and he was a doctor, and he was helping some of the revolutionaries, and they caught him, and they thought that he was one of them, so they sent him to an island as slaves. And then what he did is he escaped, and he took the slaves with him, and he became a pirate until England was freed again. And you see here you see the ship, but the ship is him, because you see a deconstruction of the person. You see an ear, you see an eye, then a mouth. At the bottom, you see an anchor. So it's really Captain Blood representing his ship and representing himself. Then later he went back and he was a doctor again after he came back, and when they freed, when England got rid of the tyrant king that they had. And this is also pen and ink with paper, color pencil. Okay, if there are any questions, stop me and I'll keep going. I'll go fairly quickly so we can have time then to go back to them. And so you remember to rate them. Okay, on the left, Land of Storm Horizons. I was not a happy camper there. So you can see that there's a lot of intensity and maybe even a little bit of anger. But you see then Don Quixote there on the left, bottom left. You see the apple. You see the candle on the right. And then you see holes into the other space. So I'm calling Land of Storm Horizons. But you see the mouth that is covered. It's like in prison, not able to express itself. Yeah, Magnolia.
So why did you decide to put Don Quixote into almost every drawing?
Because he's very important to me in my visionary archetype. So when I think of Don Quixote, I think of the archetype that I'm living out, which is the teacher, the visionary, creating a greater than life kind of thing, and then teaching a greater than life so you can fight your demons and become powerful. But living a life that, even though it appears that it's crazy, it's not, because it has a lot of biosymbols, a lot of very, very symbolic. And a woman could be also Joan of Arc. So it really doesn't have to be. and it's not a gender-based kind of thing. You could be Don Quixote in your world. But yeah, it's very important to me from the beginning, and I tried to explore it to find out why, and Don Quixote, why is it so important. And then when I went to Spain to go to school, I realized, and it's interesting that you asked that, because La Mancha is outside of Madrid, and I went to the University of Madrid. So anytime that I got very depressed, because school was I started medicine first, and then I went to psychology. I thought, well, I'm either going to have to take antidepressants, or I can go to La Mancha, look at the windmills, buy some bread, manchego cheese, and some wine, and it would come back to Madrid much better than with serotonin. So it's really had a lot of symbolism for me. So I had good wine, cheap wine, but good, and quite a bit of it. And sometimes I went back and I couldn't go to class the next day because I was unwell, but I didn't have to take antidepressants. So, okay, so I'm glad you asked, because it brings back a lot of memories. So I'm giving you narrative, and I'm giving you, it's a bibliography in print. Deconstructing self, you can see here, it still has a lot of Picasso influence, because Picasso was very influential for me. He said, learn all you can about painting, all the techniques and every method, and then forget it and start painting. And that's how he did it. So then there's the candle, there's Don Quixote, and on top there, then you have on the right, you have the windmill, on the left, you have the apple, and then you have a butterfly, the butterfly of chaos, lifting that little tent, or that little, it reminds me of the Louvre. The Louvre has a triangular glass that reminds me of that. And then the terrain is always the terrain of La Mancha. And you see self here with the eyes and the ears in different places, but it's a deconstructing self, excuse me, self, so you can find out who you are. Sometimes you have to deconstruct yourself so you then bring it back together in a new way. Sometimes you have to find out, what are the fragments that I have, or what are the fragments that I need to break away from, and then bring it back so I can become a better self, or a more evolved self. And the colors you see are usually a lot of primaries. And then another trick here is that you see that little ball. It's like a little stone with a has like a shadow. That was one of Salvador Dali's technique that he used to create perspective. Because when you look at it, you can see it's got a shadow. It creates a sense of perspective, and he did that in his painting. So I borrowed that from him. Okay. And another question? Yeah, Magnolia.
Oh, did you tell me to go ahead? I'm sorry.
What was that?
So I was listening to you about the ball, and is there a real significance of the windmill that I'm missing? Is that
for the windmill?
Yeah.
Well, the windmill represents the demons that we create, because he would go with a lance to fight the windmills as if they were giants. So symbolically, it's the demons that you have to challenge, because the demons you have in your head don't exist, but they exist for you. The ones that punish you, that they exist for you, but you couldn't really bring them out and give them you can't measure them or anything. Same thing. So Don Quixote, the novel is very allegorical, symbolic. It's one of the first, actually, any novels before that were not like that. So it's really considered the first modern novel with allegory and abstractions and narrative with the characters and all that. So that was the reason for it.
Okay. And I also noticed that it seems like you leave a lot of empty space.
Yeah.
In your drawings, and include line a lot, and lines on the ground.
Yeah. There's a lot of empty space, so that you can see the vastness of what's going on. Don't crowd them too much, so you can see vastness, and that is the vastness of the space that you have in mind, body. So it's all very biosymbolic in that sense. But yeah, that's a good observation. They're vast in that sense, not crowded. Even when they're crowded, you can see that there's a perspective that goes out, and that's how the mind works. Okay, next, see what we have next here. Okay, Aristippus, or Aristippus. Aristippus was one of my favorite philosophers, and not that well known. but he was a student of Socrates along with Plato. Plato was Socrates' student, and Aristippus was Plato's student, or Plato's uh, fellow student. And Aristippus was the first one that charged for his services. Uh, Socrates never did, Plato never did, but they were always borrowing money from Aristippus. So he was living his life, and he said, well, if you want, and Socrates asked him, why are you charging? He said, because if people want something from me, I want something from them. So I want to teach them to use their money wisely. so they can pay me, because that's the wise way to spend your money. And they called him the father of hedonism, which is wrong, because he wasn't a hedonist. He actually found pleasure in everything that he did, meaning in everything that he did, and he had a balance of things. So although they call him the father of hedonism, he really wasn't. He was much more than that. A lot of people don't understand him. And there's a professor who teaches about Aristippus, and I thought, oh, somebody about, because there's nothing, very little about him, because all of his writings were lost. So it's all anecdotal. So this guy teaches at the University of Toronto, I think, and I called him and we talked, and he said, you're interested in Aristippus? And I said, yeah. I said, well, you, my mother, and I, because there's nobody else. But he's very, very interesting. Whatever is there available about him, read him, because you're going to be fascinated with this man. So that's him, and you can see inside of his head, there's the symbol of the half apple and the light. And then you see the apple at the end, also at the horizon, and the little delineant stones to delineate time and space. So that's Aristippus. I gave him a kind of a dumb look, because he's very far from being dumb. So in art, you want to do a lot of incongruous things, and at the same time, you want to be able to get a message across. In his mouth is also a little like a little tent to enter the tent. Okay, on the right, this is very complex. It's got a lot of stuff here. Meister Eckhart was my favorite mystic. He's a Christian theologian mystic from the 13th century. And he was the one who, because all of the idea of hell in Christianity, that was all made up by St. Augustine, that hell is eternal burning, and you don't see that anywhere. In the Old Testament, you see the word for hell in Hebrew that means shallow grave. There's no such thing as hell, burning in hell. If there were a God that burned you in hell forever, he'd be a sociopath, and I wouldn't want to have anything to do with that God. But what happened is Meister Eckhart, after Saint Augustine said that the soul hates the flesh, and he said that after he screwed around and had illegitimate children and everything, and all of a sudden he becomes saintly, and he writes Confessions, which is really very good. It's another one of the first autobiographies. But then you have to be totally obsessed with sin. And Meister Eckhart said no, although he admired St. Augustine quite a bit, he said, no, the soul loves the body. So he was beginning to break away from that concept of sin and burning in hell. So he was really way ahead of his time, 13th century or 14th century, way ahead of his time. And he also, the Beguines were women that were pretty much outliers, and they weren't being, they couldn't go to confession, and it happened in France and Germany and so forth. Meister Eckhart was German. And OP means Order of Priests. That was the Dominicans. So he was very much a positive feminist, and he gave them confession, and he went to their places of their homes, and he gave them confession, and he was able to really value women as equal. So he's quite a revolutionist. And then you can see on top, you see temple-like windows, and then but you can see also within Meister Eckhart, and that is a very close image of Meister Eckhart. I did really do more of a realistic, so to show that it's Meister Eckhart. But then you can see he's within a face of a person who looks very primitive, primitive lips and the ears and everything. Does everybody see that? Okay, great. And then, of course, then you have the, on the left, you have the candle with roots coming out into a place of multi-dimension. And then on the right, you have entrances into different dimensions. Then an hourglass for his nose. And then his eyes are basically, or the eyes of the figure are stained glass. So it's got a lot of biosymbols there. But this was not planned. These are the things that come on, and sometimes they're not so linear. And it's purposely done that way, so you can get right hemisphere subconscious processes coming out there, so that you can then look at it later and say, oh, so this is Meister Eckhart. When I started drawing, I thought, oh, I'm going to draw Meister Eckhart. Then all of a sudden, I knew it was Meister Eckhart. But before that, I had no idea. Okay, so next, let's see. All right, portals of metamorphosis. This is really a very important one. This is also pen and ink with colored pencil, and they have that vastness. And you can see of course, Don Quixote. You can see the apple. You can see the portals entering on the left there. You can see the windmill at the horizon, and then you see at the bottom of the face a scroll, but also looks like a dagger. So I have no idea why I was doing that, but it's a scroll of wisdom, but it's got a dagger of the danger of bad wisdom, or the danger of misuse of wisdom. So it got a lot of symbolism. And then on top, and the face is kind of like an early classical face, and some of what Picasso did with classicals. He did, before he went into Cubism, he did those kind of faces. And then the face's head is mountains, as you can see that the mountains there, covering up the creating part of the terrain. Then on top, which is the most important part, you can see a ball and chain and an entrance to another portal. And all of that comes after I give it a name. So see, that's where left hemisphere comes in. So what that says is that you have a ball and chain that you have to break. And those are the cultural admonitions that you have, the heavy weight that you carry, the prejudice that you carry, the fears that you carry. You have to drop that before you go into the light, before you go into the portal of light. So then you can find that that sense of self, free from all the cultural extra weight that you carry. So this was a very important for me, because it's the portals of metamorphosis, the changes, the metamorphosis that you need to make. Excuse me. The one on the right is Otto Miró. And Miró was a Spanish painter also. And he did a lot of symbols, but it was very linear and very much like that. So I created a face using Miró's symbology. And then you can see that we had a lot of lines. When you look at the Miró, you see that it's got that kind of style. It's very clean and very precise, but beautiful in its own way of its simplicity. He was a Spaniard also, like Picasso. And then you can see the lines coming out from the portal on top to the right, and then they have the mouth, and you have the nose, and you have the apple on the left, and you have the little candle always there. But this one doesn't have a perspective. This is more, Miró didn't do that kind of perspective. So I wanted to then do an ode to him using Miró light qualities with the hat that he wore and the kinds of things that he did with color. There were primary colors. And so this is a pen and ink with colored pencil. Okay, next, let's see. So we're moving along, and now you can see how weird I am. Yes, I give you an opportunity because, yeah, Magnolia?
I just noticed that a lot of your pieces have holes.
Yeah.
Is there some symbology for?
What would it be for you?
Maybe something that's missing, or it could also be someplace else where you could go where you can't really see there.
Okay. All right. So you see, everybody has a symbology, and yours is just as valid as mine. This is like a Rorschach. You create your own symbology. Mine is portals into another dimension, into another place, to a mystical place or something that is not the linear dimension. So they're there for that reason. but I didn't know when I was doing it at first, but I noticed that I did it quite a bit. And also Dali did it too. So I had a lot of ideas from him that I borrowed. So yeah, they're quite a bit of it. For me, it means a portal into another dimension. But for you, it can mean anything else. And it's just as valid because these are projections that we put out from our subconscious. Okay, here we have Picasso used the clown quite a bit, or the harlequin. And the harlequin, well, it's got a lot of symbols. The harlequin, people that are with a circus and they go from town to town. They have kind of a gypsy archetype, and they part of their job is to be they were the early clowns, and they have a very sad life. Usually, clowns are very sad, and so this is the realm of the harlequin, and you can see time, because time is really very important for me too. The use of time being an affordance rather than anything that it contributes to. So you see the Picasso-like clown, see the apple, and his hands are kind of tied. And in the back you see the time component. You see the entrance on both sides of that table that he's on, and then at the end you see books, like a shelf with books. Again, the idea of knowledge and the idea of information that had been archived from history. So all those interpretations are made after the title comes. So the title is the portal to reasoning and understanding. The others are more like right hemisphere things that happen. Okay, the next one, where the waving branches meet, that title came from a two brothers that play very relaxing flute, mystical music, and one of them is called Where the Waving Branches Meet. And for some reason that came to me, I saw branches here on the left, and I see the apple again, the person covered with the apple. Then you see like a ship moving along, and then you see another branch. So it's like, for me, it was there's Don Quixote, and there's the little stone, and all of that coming together. What came to me was Where the Waving Branches Meet, and it gave me a really good sense of having done this piece. And then from the hat, you see someone else coming out, looking into the world along with the person that's, and that could be your super ego, it could be whatever you want. So you feel free to interpret it any way you want, and remember to rate them based on your interpretation or your connection with it. Okay, so next, let's see. This is the realm of change horizon. This is also, most of these are now pen and ink with colored pencil. And I use colored pencil in a way that will look more like oil or maybe acrylic, but it's really colored pencil. A lot of work to try to get that done, layer over layer. And here you see a Picasso deconstruction of the person with the apple on the top, and then the two hands coming together. And the two hands could be, if you're having a good day, it could be hands that are coming to embrace you. If you're having a bad day, hands that are coming to harm you. So it depends on where you are. And then there's a kind of idealized on the left hand, another windmill, just a piece of a windmill, fragments of a windmill. And then, of course, the entrance into another dimension. So you see, you feel almost like you can go into another dimension when you do those circles. And then the face, one has one particular look, one has a serious look. On the left, the one on the top has it could be more of an inquisitive, or maybe even a little bit of alarm. And usually, when you're doing any kind of realistic drawing, you learn in art school that the faces are not the same. If you cover the face of any painting, even your own face, you can look at it. On one side, you have one particular expression. On the other side, you have another particular expression, because visual is contralateral. So this side is being affected by this side of the brain, and this eye is being affected by the other side of the brain. But of the five senses, the only senses that have what's it called ipsilateral, which means from the same side, or contralateral from opposite side, the only senses that are that way are the visual senses. The others are only ipsilateral. So hearing for this side is here, for this side is here, it's not crossed. So time passages, again, you see the clock, you see the apple as a clock. And you see then the, would be like the bottom of the windmill with some symbols also. It has a fish and different kinds of symbol. And then on top of that, you have, of course, Don Quixote on another dimension and the apple on one of the wings of the windmill. And the colors again are these are softer colors over here, so you can see. And then at the end, you have some figures in the back, like some kind of forest or something. And there are other things that you could see that I may not even see. So some people come up with their own. These are rush arcs that, depending on where you are and your culture and your sense of aesthetics. Okay, the next. All right, the Sacred Gaudi. Gaudi was the architect that built the Sacred Family church that they've been working on it for over 100 years. And he was working on it. And when if you go to Barcelona, you can see it's a huge Gothic type of church that they're still working on it. And it's beautiful when you go in, but you see it's very organic. Gaudi was very organic. When he built a house, you walked in and you thought that you were in the bowels of some kind of organic being, but you felt very, very safe. So when you see here, you see, and this is a realistic that I did of Gaudi. That's what he looks like. But you see, like he's within the structure of the church. So if you ever go to Barcelona, you have to go and see it. And unfortunately, he was killed very young. He was working on the church, and he came out, and that's when the trains started, and he was hit by a train. He was killed by a train. But that's what Gaudi looked like, more or less. And so really, the Sacred Gaudi is because what he was building was a sacred family. So it's a play on words, the Sacred Gaudi doing the Sacred Family. Okay, any questions? Oh, by the way, there's a little synchronicity here, of course. I'm listening to flute, and the flute that I'm listening to right now is Where the Waving Branches Meet. I've been listening to flute music all day, and it came on now, Where the Waving Branches Meet. I'd like that for synchronicity. I didn't plan that, but when you tune into these things, synchronicity comes and begs you to come in, but you have to pay attention. Okay, now the Man from One Season, that comes from The Man from Autumn, my novel, The Man from Autumn. And The Man from Autumn was a mystical character, Brogan. I don't know if you read the book. And Brogan and Sabella, his wife, Brogan was a mystic, and he investigated stigmata for the Vatican like I do, so it's a little biographical. But Brogan felt that the autumn was the time that he needed to explore the mystical world. So he would go every autumn, and there are two autumns, one north of the equator and south of the equator. And every autumn he would go to places like that and study the places and look at the mysticism in his life to bring synchronicity and all kinds of ideas. And that's what I did for a while. Interestingly, also, when I wrote The Man from Autumn, without thinking about it, I finished it in Ireland, at a monastery in Ireland, in the autumn of Ireland. Then it was another edition was made, and it was in the autumn of South America in Uruguay. So the autumn has always been there. So one thing that I would suggest you do is find a season that speaks to you, and find a season that becomes a season that you want to explore your mysticism or your beauty or something specific for that. And when it comes, allow it to give you synchronicity, allow it to give you discoveries and things that have meaning to you. And in The Man from Autumn, have all of you read it, or I don't want to spoil it for you? You haven't? Okay, so I won't spoil it for you. There's a meaning for autumn that if you read the book, you'll see. And you see that it's very elaborate. A lot of the colors are basically, it's an autumn person. The nose is a trunk of a tree, and then there are branches. That took a hell of a lot of work to use color pencil to make it as full as it is. Okay, so that's The Man from Autumn. So next, we're getting close, so we can then, all right, here, Sir Macintosh, and this doesn't have a lot of mystery. This happened after I finished, and I said, oh, that's basically an ode to one of my heroes, Steve Jobs. So Sir Macintosh from the Mac, he got the idea from the Mac, from Macintosh, which is a type of apple. And you see the windmill. So I'm bunching things in that are meaningful for me. The windmill, Steve Jobs, the apple in front, and then the candle and all the other things that are there that could be, and then the little portal on the face right under the right eye for Steve Jobs to go into another dimension. So that's really an ode to Steve Jobs and Apple. And now you're seeing these things on a MacBook Air. And Apple to me is just amazing how he was such a visionary and tremendous, brilliant um, brand labeling, amazing. But he didn't know how to get out of the archetype of the visionary, and he burned out. So that's another thing about Steve Jobs that needs to be known. Okay, the vigilant harlequins. It's a harlequin again. And in order to identify emotions, there are only 6 emotions basically: surprise, disgust, happy, sad, fear. And I made the eyes a little bit bigger here, opened, so that you could see either alarm or you could see intensity. And it's up to you. You can see whatever you want, but it's the vigilant. It's a vigilance of the eyes. If you close the eyelids a little bit, you won't see that vigilant look anymore. They would be narrowed down into a less vigilant. Why? Because when you're vigilant, your eyes open up and your eyelids get out of the way so you can see what's going on. So that's the vigilant harlequins. There's one harlequin in the middle. There's one to the right at the bottom of the windmill, and of course there's the apple and Don Quixote and the different steps and dimensions. And then on the right, there's something on top there. I don't know what the hell that is. Maybe you can tell me what it is. But I did that, and it was just there, and I just left it. I thought, well, who knows? I had a patient who had an eating disorder, and this was when I was at Vanderbilt, and we had to give him a Rorschach, and it's the most monotonous and interesting Rorschach. Rorschach has ink blots, and at first they're black and white, and then you introduce color, and you can tell a lot of. So I showed him the first one. I said, "What do you see?" And he said, "Potato chips." Oh, okay. Well, that's quite weird. But then I said, "And what about the next one?" More potato chips. And he went on and on. So when the colors came on, I said, red potato chips. It was quite ill. I mean, that's very, very pathological. But all he could see was potato chips in his world, and his body showed it. So those are the vigilant harlequins, and Don Quixote looking at him, as you can see, and then there's steps into on the right to another dimension. Okay, are we done, or do we? We have some more. Okay, the unselfing journey. Unselfing is really very important in the mystical pathway. Unselfing is to get out of who you are, so you can deconstruct it and come back and see what you can be by letting go of the garbage that you pick up and that you think is you. And that's the difference between the cultural self and the private self, or the personal self. The personal self is your experience as you see it. The cultural self is the mask that you were told to wear, the fears that you were told to live, and to live within that space. That's not personal truth, that's cultural truth. And here you see a face that's quite complicated, with the different parts, with the nose and a piece of an apple, then the Don Quixote walking away so he can unself, walking away instead of looking. So these are little things that come up after I give it a name. And of course the apple, and then there's the background, there's some hills, and but you can see that that self has different dimensions even within the face, and that's what you want to do. You want to deconstruct, and sometimes people experience things that I've experienced it, and other people do too, where you actually feel. When I was a kid, it scared the hell out of me because I would feel like I was not out of body, but I couldn't identify myself. I was just looked at, and I was aware that I was aware of me. And I never told anybody because immediately they would say, "Oh, that's a depersonalizing disorder," or whatever, even before I didn't know. And that can be, depersonalizing disorder. But if it happens the way that it happened with me, it's basically things that happen with people that have a mystical edge to them, and they can depersonalize that way. And what they do is they use it in a positive way. A lot of the crazy paintings from Dali were when he was in that depersonalizing state. So if that's crazy, I think that's wonderful, because the incredible paintings that he did, beautiful work. So that was the unselfing journey. Then on the right, the inner journey. So you see, it's a lot about journey. You see a bit of Hinduism there. You see on the nose, on top of the nose, you see a figure that looks more like a Buddhist or Hindu type of guru. Then you have the candle and the hand touching the apple, and then you have like the pillars on top coming down, creating a sense of bringing East and West together, with the Hinduism as one of the gurus, and the apple would be like the choice that you make in the work that you might be doing in Hinduism or some of the Eastern philosophies and religions. So is that it, Samantha? Is it?
There's a few more, but we don't have to keep going if you don't want to.
Let's do 2 more and then we'll stop so we can have time to. But remember to rate them. Okay, these are the cultural fishbowl. This is very important because you see how convoluted it is, kind of crowded and almost feel like there's no space. And that is, the fishbowl is really where you are culturally, because cultures are very invisible. You don't know that you're being controlled by the culture. You don't know that what you're being told is what you have to be. And people want to make you happy, but rather basically what they're doing is making themselves happy and projecting their happiness to you. And then you don't know the difference because you're in the fishbowl. So there you see a convolution of books and apples and Don Quixote and of course a candle. But then at the end you see the ability to come out from the bottom. You can come out. You can funnel out of that fishbowl and become you, who you were meant to be in your personal journey, because nobody can be born for you, nobody can die for you, so nobody can tell you what's good for you. Only you can tell. But culture editors have a lot of power in enticing you, hypnotizing you to believing that something is good for you or not. Then the last one will be the Highlander, and this is the Highlanders from Scotland. In Scotland, there are quite a few, significant amount of centenarians, people who are over 100, and they live in the Highlands. And there's some myths about it that there's some people that are immortal from the Highlands. So there, I did the Scottish cap, and of course the candle and the apple, and the eyes, one looking in a particular way and another in another one. So you can see the difference if you separate them, because that's what humans look like. As far as the face, you never see a face that's perfectly symmetrical. They're never symmetrical. And if they were too symmetrical, it would be very boring. Even if somebody extremely beautiful, symmetrical, you begin to lose interest in the aesthetics of it because the brain needs a little bit of unbalance. Okay, so that's it. We'll have a few more, but I think we could stop and then take a mental break here and see what you find and what meaning it had for you. What you want to look at is see if you found any that had a 7 or had a 1, and see if you find a pattern there that you might want to discuss. And then we can go back and look at them if you like, and then we can see. And don't be afraid of expressing. So whatever you express is right. There's no pathology here. It's whatever you express. Even if you see potato chips, it's going to be okay. So don't worry about it. All right, who wants to go first? If you want to go, it's up to you.
Dr. Martinez, I have a question about the Meister Eckhart portrait. What does OP stand for?
Order of Priests.
What order was it? What order?
Dominican priests.
Okay.
The Dominicans. And that when you see a priest with OP, it means Order of Priests, but it means that he's a Dominican. And so Meister Eckhart and Thomas Aquinas, some really very powerful, what they call doctors of the church, were Dominicans. Dominicans are very intellectual. Most of them have PhDs, and it's very they encourage academia, and many of them are theologians and really very good people.
So
It's breaking up. Can you try again? Yeah, it's breaking up, Bill. I'm not sure what's happening. Let's see.
oh,
No, still not working. See what you can do. We'll go to something else and we'll come back to you. Okay? Anybody else? You have any that were 1 or a 7 or anything that you want to discuss? This is where you can begin to see your subconscious and things that you can apply to your life and to your journey. So who wants to explore? Let's see, Sarah, you need to go early, right? You want to tell us about yours before you go?
I know I haven't.
I
So
caught you there.
about, I know, a lot of pressure. My brain's still fried from the day. So like, what's the question again? Like the framing my own journey?
Yeah, what if you identify with any of them without even knowing it, but just kind of identify more like a 7 or a 1? These are extremes. We want to look at extremes, and then we can explore it and see what it means. But it's nothing that is negative or anything.
I think I identified a lot with the unselfing in terms of like getting rid of identities that I've assumed are me that are more related to culture, and trying to discover really who I am separate from what what culture is sort of defined for me and the role that I've played in my family and my childhood, and sort of starting the process of sort of getting rid of that part of self to recognize where the real self is. So I feel like I'm in that part of life journey right now.
That's good. So what that means is that of all the paintings, of all the work, you could have picked anything. So what happens is that you're going to your subconscious or conscious and saying, okay, this has the most significance for me, and this has the most urgency for me. And then you say, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is part of the journey. I'll be working on that. But you see, it gives you a lot of information when you look at art because it's symbolic. It's got a lot of subconscious processes, and it has the biosymbols. So this will be good. So that would be your journey. What you got from that, you may have already known it, but you confirm it subconsciously that that's an issue that you want to resolve and you want to work on. So you go into it now excited with, you can create your own symbols of options. You could say Don Quixote or Joan of Arc or whatever, and you can begin to create that mindscape. The whole idea is to create a mindscape that allows you to explore things that you normally couldn't if you did it totally linear, totally logical and psychologically clear. We want to go more into the mystical, not so well defined, but it's there. And then you begin to see synchronicity, and you begin to see all the weight that you carry that's not yours, and you begin to let it go in a gracious way without having to blame anybody, or just that's it. We all have that. So that's yours. That's your present, and then you want to explore that and go with it, and you'll see. And if we do more of these things, then we can talk about it in the group. If you join the group, we can certainly talk about that. I think in one of the groups I'll do a couple of these so we can teach that. Del, is your sound back up now? Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. Are you back up?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. The demons left you. Now we can hear you. What was your,
Thank you for that. So back to the OP behind Meister Eckhart. So is that the OP, is that generic? Does it only apply to the Dominican, or is that an increase?
it's breaking up again.
Does the OP only apply to the Dominican order, or is it general?
Yeah, because it's breaking up over here. Yours is clear, but yeah, that's right. So for example, SJ, when you see a Father John Smith, SJ, that means Society of Jesus. Those are the Jesuits. When you see Meister Eckhart, OP, Order of Priests, that's Dominican.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess I'm wondering why a D or why those initials don't convey Dominican, why it's a generic OP. They're all order of grace. Why is Dominican? Yeah, so I'm getting to.
They each have their ways. That's how they when you create an order, you have to go to the Pope and get it approved, and that's what they decided to be. And that's their main thing is to be preachers. The Society of Jesus more to identify with Jesus, and they're great negotiators, by the way. And so, did you have a one that you identified with the most?
Yeah, I with
Did anybody get it? Was that with what? It broke up.
horses.
With horses?
Horses.
With Don Quixote?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, with Hidalgo and the time passages.
Okay. All right. Any particular reason that you can think of?
When I was a little girl, in the center room of our home, we had a painting that had horses.
Okay.
And so horses have always been like, I don't know if it was the location of that work in the home, but horses are very attractive to me. I just now put that together that I saw your work.
Yeah. Well, what you can do is one of the things you can do. You can say, okay, the horses carry Don Quixote. What is the horse that's carrying you symbolically? What are the things that you use to carry you to move you from one place to the other? You could look at that and explore that with meditation. You can do meditations and explore that, and then say, okay, what is my carrier? What am I using to carry me from one place to another? Is it my carrier, or is it a carrier that somebody imposed on me? And you can get a lot of information by doing that, because whatever interests you is consciously there.
How do you define that? What does that mean?
Just breaking up. I'm sorry. Try again and see if we can get it.
When you say what carries me, how are you defining that? Like, what do you mean? What carries me?
And whatever it means to you, I leave it very vague, and then you decide what it is. You make the interpretations. Because if I tell you mine, it would be my projection of what's going on, rather than what's going on with you. So you leave it vague, and then you look for it, and you'll find it when you start looking in an inquisitive way. Who else? Let's see, Beth, do you have anything you want to?
Yes. Actually, the unselfing journey was one, but we already talked about that. But I was intrigued by the portals of metamorphosis. To me, that represents courage, moving through fear into the unknown in order to transform
Okay.
to something higher self. So I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's really very good. So what you can do, those archetypes are important to you. So what you can do is you can go back and do a meditation and ask yourself, under what conditions have I been courageous? Under what conditions have I explored new things in my life? And then you get a richness of information, because anything that you can come up with is a little hint that there's a lot there to discover that will be really good for you to clarify. So courage is an issue. So Don Quixote was courageous, although symbolically fighting windmills, but he needed courage to fight the windmill. So you look at your courage archetype and see under what condition have you been courageous, and especially under what condition has the culture thwarted or blocked your courage and made you not act with your courage and gave you bad names for your courage. Because sometimes the courage could say, well, you're just too tenacious, or you're just too stubborn. So you look at that to see how it's been punished, or how it's been also enhanced, which is another way to look at it. So you see there's a richness of information when you do the Mindscapes. It's really very good. And do you have one, Magnolia?
I noticed that I think all the ones I gave a 7 to are like more clear faces. It was like El Hidalgo, let's see, Master Eckhart and the Sacred Gaudi, which was my favorite, and the Highlander.
Okay. And
I
what is
just
that?
noticed that
What kind of interpretation you make of that?
I'm not sure.
Just play with it.
Yes.
Play with it a little, see what comes. Because that's what I do with my paintings. I play with it and something comes out. So you play with your head and let things come out and see what, there's no wrong and right. They're all yours.
Maybe if I saw them again, it would be a little easier because I was trying to, because it just, I think those are all like more representative, clearer faces. So maybe there is a reason why I'm attracted to that.
Okay.
The Sacred Gaudi I really, really liked because it felt like he was the church, and it made me think of your home, your house, that's also you.
Okay.
Like
So
I am my home.
yeah, you can look at yourself as your temple and see how you're treating it and see how you're respecting it or not, and what they told you about your temple. What was your temple, or what is the temple that you believe that you are? And you can do that with meditations, and it'll open up all kinds of things for you. So, okay, Samantha, do you want to do one for you?
I have lots and lots of sevens, but I had a new piece that has never really struck me before, but Ode to Miro really stood out to me today. And when I think of it, I think about the clean lines and the pristine connections between the different components of the piece. Like
And
clarity, the different components are very clear and bold, but they have very clean lines connecting everything.
and does that mean anything for you, and with things that you might want to do, or does it give you any message?
Lack of, there's no confusion, there's no disconnectedness. Everything's cohesive and put together well.
Okay, very good. Great,
Mhm.
that's good. All right, so did Beatrice have to leave? Was she here?
Oh, Sarah left early though.
Oh, Sarah, yeah, okay. All right, okay, well, thank you very much, and then we'll have the next one next month. And remember that the problem is that the the website will put out a link, and then it gets very confusing. So what we're going to do is Samantha will send you a link, and come in about 5-10 minutes early in case it doesn't work. You can let her know so you'll be able to get in by the time we start. So that'll be good. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. And have a wonderful evening, and thank you for participating. Everybody, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.